cannot, we must not, we will not leave our citizens behind. We're going to be focused on jobs, economic vitality, and bringing Philadelphia back from this economic crisis. We're working every day to make this a safer city. Here in Philadelphia, we know how to get things done. We are sick and tired of being sick and tired about blight and deteriorated properties in this city. Thanks for coming on such short notice, and I apologize for holding you up and being late. A couple of announcements. I, along with a number of other folks, I'm sure, read a story in yesterday's paper that laid out a series of pieces of information, but with a level of detail that seemed to indicate that not only were records or files accessed by folks either currently in the Department of Licenses and Inspections or formerly in the department, but with a level of detail with regard to demolitions and whether or not inspections took place or did not take place or were required to take place that are, if true, which I do not know that at the moment, but if true, given the specificity of a certain number of buildings that may have been looked at or not looked at, requires a significant amount of attention. If true, it is completely unacceptable. But quite honestly, we're not exactly sure whether the reports, all of them, some of them, a few of them, are in fact true or not. As a result, I have formally asked Inspector General Amy Curlin to conduct an investigatory audit of whether, in yesterday's news story, whether it was specific, 82 properties, and if I'm remembering correctly from the story, half may not have been inspected, or some may have been inspected, or you'll read the story, you know what the details are. In any event, tremendously troubling. We must get to the bottom of it to find out whether or not inspections were conducted. Are there pictures? Are there details and data and the like that are supposed to be in place as a result of past or even more troubling, new regulations that have, and laws that have been put into place by me, either in an executive order capacity or legislation passed by City Council and signed by me to help ensure, to the greatest extent possible, that these new rules and regulations for demolitions and inspections or construction are followed by the inspectors and supervisors and all the employees in the Department of Licenses and Inspections. Reading information, again, with a certain level of detail that public employees may not actually be performing their jobs is completely unacceptable, will not be tolerated. As a result of when the Inspector General gets the information and records that she needs, and we've already contacted Commissioner Carlton Williams, who, of course, he and his team have pledged their full cooperation and support. When that investigatory audit is completed, we will, of course, release that audit and have more to say about it at that time. I'm not going to prejudge. I do not know any answers related to the story from yesterday, which is, quite frankly, why we're here today. Our administration, in partnership with Philadelphia City Council, have taken a number of extraordinary steps, certainly in the wake of the tragedy back in June of 2013 at 22nd and Market Street, to increase the funding for the department, to hire new inspectors, new training programs, new collaboration between Department of Licenses and Inspections and the Fire Department, for instance, and a number of other rules and regulations, all designed to make sure that Philadelphians are as safe as possible and that these rules and regulations are followed. And so I take this matter very, very seriously. I do not know, in this particular instance, whose report is accurate or who is telling the truth. And whether it's folks who are in the department today, folks who previously worked in the department, sharing information with any number of you in the press, or other analyses that have been done, or even the department's analysis, whether in this particular case or in others, there are too many unknown pieces of information that may or may not be factual, that rise, at least for me, to the level of asking formally the Inspector General and her team to go in, get every record, get every document, get every piece of information, and whether it's related to, as reported, 82 particular properties or more, to find out the facts. Were they inspected? Did they need to be inspected? What rules and regulations govern those particular properties and their circumstances? Were there pictures? Were there not pictures? Was data properly entered into the system? Did others potentially access the system and make any changes, one way or the other, that could potentially either compromise public safety or try to recreate a record in a post-dated kind of fashion? So the request has been made. Again, fortunately, and I appreciate her cooperation. This was not on her plate on Friday, but got on her plate over the weekend. And so I appreciate the cooperation of the Inspector General, certainly the leadership of Deputy Mayor for Public Safety, Everett Gillison, who oversees the Department of Licenses and Inspections, and certainly Commissioner Carlton Williams and their commitment and pledge of support to be as cooperative as possible and find all records or data that the IG asked for. Again, when that investigatory audit is completed, which I have no idea how long it will take, and I usually don't know how long any investigation by the IG will take, but what I do know is that they are thorough, they are diligent, but also work in a timely fashion to get to the facts, which is what's important here, and then share that information, in this particular case, with the public. With that, for whatever I can, for whatever questions I can possibly answer, I will, and if I don't have an answer, you probably know that I won't.
Mr. Mayor, the Commissioner has been under fire of late on a variety of fronts. What is your level of confidence in him, given these most latest allegations, which I understand are at this point just allegations?
Well, they are allegations. I appreciate the characterization of the question. But secondly, as I've expressed before, there is active, aggressive effort by Commissioner Carlton Williams to actually change and reform the Department of License and Inspections. I can tell you from firsthand knowledge that, you know, as is sometimes the case, unfortunately, there are some people who want to support those changes, and there are some who are desperately fighting to hold on to the status quo, and they are fighting those changes within the department. And so often you see conflict in that regard. With regard to inspectors out on the street, again, certainly any of us in leadership positions ultimately have to take a level of responsibility for what people do or don't do. But in this particular case, as we've seen in any number of matters, often, unfortunately, for instance, with the Philadelphia Police Department, some people do their jobs and some people don't. The ones who don't, at least on the police side, more oftentimes than not get fired. That does not mean, in that particular instance, that Police Commissioner Ramsey is not doing his job. What's troubling here is that these are inspectors. They know what their job is. They've been trained. They know what the law is. And whether it's inspectors or supervisors, out in the street, again, these are all allegations, doing or not doing their job. What I want to get to is the bottom line of what happened or didn't happen. Then we'll let the chips fall where they may. But I'm certainly not going to take action without factual information. In the past, Bruce, not to give you a long answer, some of the reports in the past have been, I'd say from time to time, somewhat more anecdotal. You know, a property here, a property there, and I don't mean always one or two. It could be 5 or 6, it could be 10. But often more anecdotal and a whole lot of commentary that goes with it. In this particular case, what I read, at least yesterday, was much more detailed, much more specific. And as we will try to pull together this information, again, the number 82 seems to be in my memory from yesterday. That's a pretty definitive universe of properties and records accessed, supposedly, and a certain percentage, significantly high from my perspective, supposedly not inspected at all. I don't know whether that's true or not. But if it's true, it's unacceptable. And if it's not true, then we should have that answer as well.
My
Why is
follow-up
the
question was,
commissioner
the
never
commissioner is
available
not
to
here
answer
right
this?
now. I asked originally
I
about
didn't hear
your
the first
level.
part.
I asked originally about your level of confidence in the commissioner. I note the commissioner, unless I'm missing something, is not here. Wouldn't it be logical for him to be here to stand behind you, even if he's not going to speak? Just the idea, this is his department after all. Why is he
Yeah,
here?
no, I understand. I think the last time there was a announcement with regard to the department, I think the commissioner and I were standing here together. So you should not read anything into that at all. This announcement is really more about the Inspector General, who is standing next to me, and less about the commissioner of the department. Again, what I'm particularly focused on here, what the request was to see whether or not the inspectors are doing their jobs. And the deputy mayor talked to Commissioner Williams once yesterday, once today, and he's already sent some information to the deputy mayor. But the primary point of today's announcement really has more to do with the Inspector General and less to do with the commissioner of the department.
Mayor, you've got about 70 days left in your administration. Can this be done in that brief a period of time?
I've never, ever asked the Inspector General to set a time frame on any investigatory audit, and I think in this particular case, and I'm not going to do so in this particular case, the Inspector General is quite mindful, A, of the calendar, but I think more importantly, in this instance, she's that much more mindful of getting it right. The work will go on. The city of Philadelphia will continue to function and operate after I leave on January 4th. I can assure you of that. And getting to the truth and getting to the bottom line is really what this effort is all about. If it can be done before then, love to have that, and then I would take whatever action is necessary. But for 7 3/4 years, I've had a relationship with the Inspector General of never asking for a timeline or a deadline. What I've always asked for is the expertise which she has delivered.
Mr. Mayor, with respect to, while respecting all that an independent audit could accomplish, the basic underlying allegations in the story, is this not something that could be answered now, that the commissioner can answer now? Like, how do we not know if even the allegations that that they're not being carried out? Is that something that we can't answer right now? That inspections aren't?
Yeah, again, I guess, I mean, I think it would be comparable to if Police Commissioner Ramsey was here and you asked him, do you know for a fact that every police officer on the streets of Philadelphia abided by every rule in the police handbook? I think he would probably say no, given the fact that he has fired more police officers than any police commissioner in modern times. So on the one hand, it is probably impossible for the Commissioner of License and Inspections to know exactly what each and every commissioner has done or not done. As best I know, they're all adults, and they know what the rules and regulations are, and they know what they're supposed to do. What I've asked is for an independent outside person, not outside the government, but certainly outside of that department, to take their own investigatory audit of everything that's going on to ensure accuracy and integrity outside of the department.
And understanding that's a step the city is taking, but I understand that that's a step that you're taking, the city is taking. In the meantime, would there be anything, at least to get a more immediate understanding of what could be happening within the department? Will the commissioner now trying to get an understanding to provide to you about, yes, this is what we understand to be true or not true while this is happening?
The commissioner will cooperate with the Inspector General and share that information with the Inspector General, and I'll await the Inspector General's report.
Your spokesman said in the story that the analysis was wrong. What's happened in the last couple of days to change your mind?
I'm sorry, Pat,
Yeah, well, your spokesman is quoted in the story as saying the analysis was wrong, but now you're...
Yeah, I think there
Ask
might,
someone else.
as I best understand it, there may have actually been a slight inaccurate reporting of what Mark McDonald said or didn't say. If I'm remembering correctly from a conversation yesterday, I think Mark may have forwarded information to the reporter from the L9 Commissioner's Chief of Staff, and then the reporter inaccurately may have reported those comments as being Mark McDonald's comments, as opposed to him having forwarded someone else's comments. I think that's what happened yesterday, or whenever that happened.
Could you explain the Inspector
Let me
General's
go back.
process a little bit?
I'll let the Inspector General explain their process. The other entity that will work with the IG, second piece of information for your question, you know that I've created a commission with regard to the Department of Licenses and Inspections to oversee implementation of many of the recommendations, and their work and expertise will be very helpful in this process as well. Just want to make sure I communicate that. With regard to the IG's process or procedure, I'm going to leave that to her, because
Do you have subpoena ability? Does it operate almost like a grand jury investigation? You have people testify, you go in there and have forensic auditors and all of that at your disposal?
yeah, I think you've been watching a little too much Law and Order. But the IG actually is, and she'll come up. I mean, it's a very serious and powerful position. Public employees in the executive branch are required to cooperate with the Inspector General. There are significant consequences for either lack of cooperation or lying to the IG. And they are required to turn over any document or piece of information that the IG requests. So with that as a setup, Amy Curran.
Our process is really different depending on the investigation, and right now we have allegations. Until we start interviewing people, looking at what, if any, documents can corroborate those allegations, we'll have to take it from there.
So you're talking about many, many months of investigating.
I have no idea. I haven't seen the files yet.
How about the Poplar Street investigation? Has that been wrapped up, or were you guys looking into?
We were looking into that. That was a personnel matter. It's not the kind of thing that is public.
Amy, how
Any
long would a
questions for me?
typical investigation like this take?
Again, I really can't answer that.
I don't
I haven't
think there's
seen
anything
any of the
typical about
files
this.
or any of the documents. Haven't talked to any of the witnesses yet.
And Mr. Mayor, there seems to be
Just
enough.
I mean, I read IG reports all the time. I think that, as Amy tried to describe, I mean, each one is fact-specific, incident and circumstance-specific. I don't necessarily know that there is a typical, IG investigation. What I can tell you, though, is that they are thorough. They are in-depth. They take their work very seriously, as I asked her to when I asked her to come into the government, and I think they've been tremendously helpful in trying to set a new culture overall across the city government. I think there are some extra challenges in that particular department that come as a result of culture and behaviors that have developed probably over 30, 40 plus years.
Just to be
What's
clear,
alleged in the article was apparently disturbing enough for you to come out here to talk like this today and to appoint the Inspector General and give her the task of investigating.
Yes.
How disheartening for you, if any of this is true, how disheartening is it 2 years after the Salvation Army collapse, when the city dedicated itself to making sure something like that never happens again, and you put a lot of personal capital involved in that?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the question. So, I mean, this is not about me, but as a public servant, and certainly as a mayor, again, I'm not going to prejudge anything. With every respect to every possible person in the news media here, I've at least learned over 30-plus years that, how would I say this kindly? I mean, you might not be able to believe everything you read in the paper, see on TV, hear on the radio, or even across the intensely monitored social media outlets. But you're right, it was enough of a troubling nature that if it were true, if it were close to true, as I talked with the team over the weekend, it was very important for us to be out here today. We take public safety very, very seriously. We take public service very seriously. And if people are not doing their jobs, regardless of what department, but in particular in a department one of whose main missions certainly is public safety, then there are very serious consequences to come should that I still be here when that report comes in, and if there is truth to people not doing their jobs, they will feel the full weight of this office.
Just to be clear.
Last question.
Just to be clear, if in fact these folks were falsifying documents to suggest that they did these safety inspections and then, and in fact did not, does that rise, could that potentially rise to a criminal matter as opposed to simply you lose your job? Are we talking about the potential for criminal?
Yeah.
charges here? As you're aware?
Virtually impossible for me to say at this point, and again, I mean, I know it's a hypothetical question, I don't really want to give a hypothetical answer. I think on that one, let's have the investigatory audit, let's get to some real answers and real results. And quite frankly, in her past life, her previous position, before coming into city government, I would leave the judgment with regard to potential referral, for instance, because we have no ability, even if someone did commit a crime at the city administration level, we're not the law enforcement body here. But in many instances, Amy and her team have made referrals to the appropriate level of law enforcement, city, state, and federal, whatever was appropriate. And we would certainly pursue the same course of action if we thought that whether it was negligence, lying, false documentation, manipulation of systems, if any of those circumstances did exist, then we would make the appropriate referral. Thanks.
On another subject, Mayor?
Why don't you talk to Mark about another subject? I'm not doing another subject on this subject. Thanks.